A nurse was hired to care for a paralyzed billionaire. One day, when no one was around, she approached the millionaire, and what happened next left her shocked. The sound of an old Vespa Piaggio, its red paint faded but still strong, mixed with the busy noise of Riyadh's King Fahd Road. Fatimah, dressed in a clean white uniform and wearing a helmet with marks from time, navigated her scooter through the crowded streets. This was her first day at her new job. Her heart raced with excitement, having achieved her dream of becoming a nurse. Just days ago, she had received her long-awaited certification. As she neared her destination, her thoughts felt like verses of an old poem full of wisdom. Life, she thought, doesn't always give second chances to recover what's lost, but it gives us threads to create something stronger and more beautiful from what's left. Feeling more determined, Fatimah tightened her grip on the scooter's handle and turned onto a quieter road that led to a wealthy neighborhood. As she reached Al Yasmin, the houses became bigger and more impressive, each hidden behind tall walls that seemed to hold secrets. Her small scooter struggled a little up the incline, surrounded by so much luxury. Finally, she arrived at her destination, a large mansion that combined traditional Arabian elegance with modern style. The three-story house stood surrounded by well-kept gardens, and its windows reflected both the bright desert sun and the shadows of Fatimah's doubts. Turning off the engine, Fatimah carefully took off her helmet, her hands shaking. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her responsibilities. "You can do this, Fatimah al-Mansouri," she told herself, her voice steady with determination. "Remember, you have compassion in your heart. It's even in your name." Straightening her posture, she picked up her work bag and walked toward the gate, where a quiet guard named Omar stood. He opened the gate and let her inside, welcoming her to the next chapter of her life. She whispered to herself, "I'm here to bring hope where it's needed. But what if I can't see the path I need to follow?" The mansion's main door creaked open slowly. A middle-aged woman, wearing a perfectly fitted black abaya and white blouse, greeted her. She looked professional but serious, as if the house itself had left its mark on her. "You must be Fatimah," the woman said, her voice calm and firm. "Yes, ma'am. It's a pleasure," Fatimah replied, showing respect with a slight bow. "Welcome. Follow me, please." The sound of their footsteps echoed on the polished marble floors as the housekeeper led her through the grand mansion. The hallways seemed endless, decorated with beautiful calligraphy and framed portraits of ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow them. Antique furniture, sparkling chandeliers, and soft silk curtains showed the wealth of the house, but everything felt overshadowed by a quiet sadness. "The patient is on the top floor, in the master bedroom," the housekeeper said, as they reached a large staircase with a red carpet muffling their footsteps. "The master of the house is in a delicate condition." At the top of the stairs, the housekeeper opened a pair of large wooden doors, revealing a room fit for royalty. A big bed, covered in white sheets, stood in the center, surrounded by fine furniture. In the middle of the bed lay a still man, Sheikh Ahmed al-Mutlaq. His pale, peaceful face looked like someone who had fought a battle that no one else had seen. The soft beeping of medical machines and the quiet hum of life support filled the room. The housekeeper, Zainab, stopped at the door. "I trust Sheikh Ahmed is in good hands. I leave him with you," she said, then left quickly. As Fatimah approached the man, she felt a heavy silence in the air, which made her uneasy. She quickly noticed the patient's neglected state and realized his hygiene had been poorly cared for. Frowning, she thought to herself, "This is no place for carelessness. I need to start here." And so began her journey, one that would soon lead her into an unexpected whirlwind of events, uncovering secrets that had been hidden inside the mansion's walls. "This isn't right," Fatimah thought, a mix of anger and sadness tightening her chest. Without wasting any time, she grabbed her bag and started preparing the things she needed to clean him. She spread clean towels on the bed, got a basin of warm water from the bathroom, and picked out the special soaps with care. She carefully removed the dirty linens and gown, revealing a weak body that must have once been strong. Gently, she turned to Sheikh Ahmed, careful not to harm his fragile state. She put on her gloves and began cleaning each part of his body, starting with the most delicate areas, making sure every sign of neglect was gone. She changed the absorbent undergarment that hadn't been changed for far too long. Her actions were slow and thoughtful, as if each move was her way of giving him back some dignity. Just as she finished, the door opened quickly. A strong smell of expensive perfume filled the room, trying to hide the unpleasant scent of decay. A woman entered with a dramatic air, her posture regal, her hair tied neatly. She wore a luxurious fur coat and looked at Fatimah with a mix of disdain and disgust. "Oh my God, I'm going to be sick," she said, covering her nose with a perfectly manicured hand. "Thank heavens you're here. You must be the new nurse." Fatimah, still kneeling by the bed, looked up and met the woman's gaze with a calm, kind smile. "Yes, ma'am, I'm Fatimah at your service. And who are you?" "I'm the wife of that." The woman waved her hand toward Sheikh Ahmed, her tone cold and indifferent. Fatimah felt the weight of her harsh words fill the room with a heavy atmosphere. At that moment, Fatimah realized that her job wouldn't just be about caring for a man stuck in silence. She would also have to deal with the cold wall around the heart of this woman who called herself his wife. Fatimah made a decision then and there. She would help Sheikh Ahmed break free from the silence that trapped him. Her mission would not only be about healing his body, but also bringing back the spark of humanity he had lost. She knew that sometimes the very people meant to care for us are the ones who break us down, leaving us in despair. Fatimah gently took Sheikh Ahmed's hands in hers and began to move his limbs slowly, as if trying to wake up a sleeping body. Each careful movement was a soft plea to his muscles, urging them to come alive. As if her touch could bring the blood back to his body, she hummed a soft, peaceful tune. Her voice, low and soothing, seemed to flow through his skin, bringing calm with her unwavering hope. She looked around the grand room, which felt more like a tomb than a home. A quiet sigh escaped her as she stared at the forgotten wealth that had once filled this place with life, but now only reminded her of what had been lost. "There must be something that can help me bring you back," she said, her voice full of both sadness and hope. Her search led her to a small, simple music box tucked away in a corner. Its plainness stood out among the expensive decorations around it. She held it gently, as if it were something precious, and turned to Sheikh Ahmed. "This must mean something to you," she whispered, her voice soft. "Maybe it will give you a reason to fight with me." She wound it up, and a slow, haunting melody began to play. She held it close to his ear and waited. Nothing. Unwilling to give up, she moved the box closer to his eyes. Then she saw it. A small glimmer in his gaze. A tear, faint but real, slowly fell down his cheek. "Don't worry, Sheikh Ahmed," she said with newfound strength in her voice. "It's worth building a bridge to reach you because I see you're right there, waiting to be saved. And I will save you." Carefully she closed the music box and set it aside. She leaned in and placed a soft kiss on his forehead, giving him a hug that seemed to pull together all the broken pieces of his spirit. Her scent, a mix of lavender, jasmine, and a hint of sunflower, lingered in the air, carrying a message only his soul could understand. He was not alone. The door suddenly opened, and Layla stepped inside. Her golden hair was neatly tied back, and her face showed a mix of tiredness and superiority. She wore an expensive outfit and held a smartphone, her fingers tapping on it as she spoke with impatience. "The contract," she said with a sarcastic smile, looking around the room without much interest. "You know his digestion is awful, probably because no one wants to stay and change his diapers." Fatima looked up from the bedside, trying to stay calm. "Ma'am, what did you say your name was?" she asked quietly. Layla paused, put her phone away, and gave Fatima a cold look. "Layla," she replied sharply. Fatima nodded slightly. "Mrs. Layla, how long has your husband been like this?" "Only a month," Layla answered with an exaggerated sigh. "But it feels like forever. Honestly, finding a good nurse to change diapers all the time has been a nightmare." Fatima felt a pang in her chest at how distant Layla sounded. She glanced at Sheikh Ahmed, lying motionless on the bed, his face calm, but showing no sign of the struggles he had faced. Fatima gathered her thoughts and asked softly, "Could you tell me what caused his condition?" "A car accident," Layla said, looking at her phone as if the conversation was annoying her. "A drunk driver was on the wrong side of the road. Happens late at night." Fatima asked gently, "What did the doctors say about his recovery?" Layla frowned in annoyance. "They said it's uncertain. He has severe brain injury with widespread damage, but honestly, there's nothing to be done." Fatima nodded slowly, taking in what she had just heard. After a short pause, she asked, "Was he alone in the accident, or did someone else get hurt too?" Layla sighed impatiently. "I was with him. We were coming back from dinner, celebrating our first wedding anniversary." A brief look of compassion crossed Fatima's face. "Thank God you weren't hurt," she said sincerely. Layla gave a bitter laugh. "Oh, something serious happened to me, all right. He swerved the car to save me, and now I'm left with this. It's worse than a funeral. At least with that I'd cry and move on, but this, when I can't find a nurse fast enough and that awful smell starts coming from his diapers, it's too much." Fatima lowered her gaze, trying to keep her emotions in check. She gently reached out and touched Sheikh Khaled's hair, her fingers brushing through it with tenderness. The simple act spoke louder than words. "Don't listen to her. I'm here for you." Layla, unaware of the soft gesture, turned and walked out of the room. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble floor as she left without saying goodbye to either her husband or Fatima. The only sound left was the echo of her footsteps down the hall. Fatima stayed by the bedside, gazing at Sheikh Ahmed's still figure with a mixture of gentleness and determination. She whispered softly, as if speaking to both him and herself, "From the first moment I saw you, I knew I would care for you, even though I don't understand why yet." She paused, her eyes fixed on his peaceful face, waiting for an answer that would never come. But in her heart, she didn't need one. There was something in his stillness that called to her, a reminder of a man who once had so much to say, but now waited to be heard in silence. Fatima realized then that this battle wasn't just his, it was hers too. Together they would face the silence, no matter how lonely the journey ahead might seem. Fatima let out a deep breath, but this time it wasn't because of sadness. It carried a quiet promise. She leaned toward Sheikh Ahmed again, surrounding him with the scent of oud, jasmine and desert marigolds, letting her warmth fill the emptiness others had left. The place where thoughts wander is not an abyss, but a threshold. Only those who carry a torch can help guide others across. Fatima's room was quiet, a calm contrast to the sounds echoing through the large mansion. The warm light from her desk lamp lit up the pages of a thick medical textbook. Her eyes focused intently on the lines, her pencil marking important points. Her thoughts were clear and focused, one step at a time. "Ked, my Ked," she thought softly, shaping her words with care. "First, we'll deal with your digestive issues, the one that's been troubling you and your family for so long. But to me, every small detail is a piece of the puzzle we'll solve together." Minutes passed in quiet focus. Then, Fatimah's eyes lit up when she found a passage that might hold the answer. She placed her pencil down and sat up with renewed energy, as if her tiredness had disappeared. "Got it," she whispered excitedly, a proud smile spreading across her face. She closed the book gently, marked her spot carefully, and reached for her watch to set an alarm. "I'll get to the kitchen before the chef notices," she whispered with determination, her eyes shining with resolve. After placing the book neatly on her desk, she turned off the lamp and lay down, her thoughts focused on the first light of morning and the small victory ahead for Sheikh Khaled. As the call to Fajr echoed in the distance, Fatimah got up, dressed in her clean white uniform, and made her way through the silent halls of the mansion to the kitchen. She turned on the lights, tied an apron around her waist, and began looking through the pantry and fridge. She picked out fresh, healthy ingredients, carefully placing them on the counter. "Let's do this," Fatimah whispered, clenching her fists in determination. "It's time to make a meal that will help calm his mind and ease his discomfort. It's time to bring him out of this dark place, no matter what." With steady, careful movements, she began chopping, mixing, and preparing the ingredients. Each step felt like a well-practiced dance, as if by cooking she could offer Khaled hope. When she was done, she stepped back and smiled with pride. "Perfect," she whispered, removing her apron and carefully arranging the tray. Just as she was about to leave the kitchen, the door swung open, and Amina, the mansion's chef, entered. Amina was a middle-aged woman, stout and serious, with her arms crossed and an angry look on her face. She glared at Fatimah as if her presence in the kitchen was an insult. "What are you doing here?" Amina asked sharply, her tone full of annoyance. Fatimah took a deep breath before answering, her voice calm but firm. "Sorry, Miss Amina," she said, bowing her head slightly in respect before meeting Amina's eyes. "I understand this is your kitchen, and I respect that, but I need you to know that whether or not you approve, I will do everything I can to restore Sheikh Khaled's health. This isn't just about treating a stomach problem or a fragile mind. It's about making a meal that nourishes hope and gives life to a soul that refuses to give up." The kitchen fell into a quiet silence for a moment. Cecilia's stern expression softened, and her hands lowered from her hips. Fatimah carefully carried the tray into Sheikh Khaled's room, the warm smell of the food filling the air. She sat down by his bedside, adjusting the support under his body to keep him slightly raised. She took a small spoon, dipped it into the nutritious mixture, and gently brought it to Sheikh Khaled's barely open lips. This was the start of a quiet but determined effort, one driven by compassion, patience, and the belief that even the smallest sign of life could be revived. The spoon touched his lips, and with a slow but noticeable movement, his throat shifted, enough to swallow. That small movement sparked hope in Fatimah's heart. "This bite is for your mind, Sheikh Khaled," she whispered as she carefully fed him the first spoonful. Each bite was accompanied by soft words full of promises. "This one is for your stomach, to calm the discomfort inside," she said gently. When she reached the last bite, she paused, holding the spoon in front of him. Her gaze was steady, full of tenderness and determination. "And this last bite, this one is for me, to remind you that I am here with all my patience." She brought the spoon closer, and this time Sheikh Khaled's lips opened a little wider. The small gesture made Fatimah's heart fill with hope. "Can you hear me, Sheikh Khaled?" she asked, her voice soft and full of belief. Her eyes glistened with the hope that something had shifted, something small but important. She smiled and gently wiped the corner of his mouth before touching his face. Her touch was a promise. This is just the beginning. It's easy to join in during good times, but only real love stays when there are challenges and pain. The next week, the soft morning light filtered through the heavy curtains, casting a gentle glow on Sheikh Khaled's peaceful face. Fatimah entered, her usual energy cheerful, with a warm smile and a bag of tools for physiotherapy. Every movement felt like part of a sacred routine. She placed a soft rolled towel under Sheikh Khaled's neck to support him, then leaned closer and gently touched his still arms. Before starting, she spoke quietly, as if sharing a secret. Sometimes the body forgets what it can do, but don't worry, Sheikh Khaled. I'm here to remind you. Even if your muscles are asleep, they still remember. We'll wake them up one step at a time, like a gentle dance between my hands and your skin. With slow, careful movements, she lifted his left arm, extending it to the side and gently bending it. It felt like the first dance between two hesitant partners learning to move together. Your bones are the melody, Sheikh Khaled, and my hands are the rhythm, she whispered. Then she moved to his other arm, gently rotating the joints and cradling it with care. Patience is the root of all miracles, she smiled and said, each time I move your limbs, I plant seeds that will grow into movement. After finishing his arms, she knelt down to focus on his legs. With light pressure, she massaged his tense muscles, working on the key points to help his circulation. Your legs aren't just for support, Sheikh Khaled. They're wings, resting for now, but they will fly again. Today we plant the strength that will carry them to places yet unknown. Finally, she reached his feet, making gentle circles around his ankles to awaken each joint. Your feet are like sleeping seeds, Sheikh Khaled, she whispered softly. Even if they've been scattered, a little care and love will help them find the soil they need to grow. She finished by holding his hands, gently working on each joint. Your hands, Sheikh Khaled, are like sails on a calm sea. With each little movement, we send a breeze to guide them back to the ocean of life. The subtle responses from his body seemed to tell Fatimah that she was on the right path. When the session ended, she wiped his forehead softly and said, "Thank you, Sheikh Khaled, for letting me be the one to remind you that life still flows through every part of you." Leaning in, she kissed his forehead and held his hands, completing the day's ritual with the same promise: she would return tomorrow. Weeks passed, and the mansion's study remained an imposing room, with one wall lined with dusty bookshelves and a huge wooden desk piled with papers. Behind the desk sat Layla, her forehead creased as she looked through financial documents, her hand pressed against her temple as if the weight of all the numbers was too much. A soft knock on the door broke the silence. "Come in," Nora said shortly, not looking up from her papers. Fatimah peeked inside, her hands nervously clasped in front of her. "Miss Layla, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have a question." "What?" Nora replied, irritation clear in her voice as she continued looking at the papers. "I wanted to know if there's something your husband really liked, something that might help get a response from him," Fatimah asked, her voice calm despite the tension. Nora finally looked up, a sarcastic laugh escaping her lips. "If I told you he liked horseback riding, would that help? Maybe some pictures of horses would work wonders." Fatimah pressed her lips together, trying to keep calm. "But there must be something else, right? Was it just horses?" Nora leaned back in her chair, twirling a pen between her fingers. She sighed, frustrated, before answering, "Horses and certain cats." Fatimah raised an eyebrow. "What kind of cats?" "The grey ones. What are they called?" "Oh yes, Russian blue cats." A glimmer of hope appeared in Fatimah's eyes. "Maybe I could find one. Perhaps it could help get a reaction from your husband." Before she could finish, Nora raised her hand to stop her. Her voice became sharp. "Don't even think about it, Fatimah. I'm allergic to cats. I can't stand them. Khaled always wanted one, but I never let him. Those cats make me sneeze so much, it's ridiculous." Fatimah lowered her gaze, hands tightly clasped to hide her frustration. Nora's voice grew colder. "Not even the best doctors have helped him. I've spent a fortune on specialists, and they all told me what I already knew," she said, her words harsh. "He'll probably stay like this forever." Fatimah tried to speak, her voice trembling. "But sometimes I notice that he—" Nora slammed her hand on the desk. "Stop wasting my time. Do you even know what pays your salary?" Her tone was sharp. "It's the business deals I manage, the ones I inherited from my husband. I'll have to work even harder to make up for the money his condition is draining. When he dies, I want to be in control of the fortune, not some disaster." Fatimah's chest tightened, but she remained silent, bowing her head to hide her sadness. "Don't look so pitiful, dear. It's almost certain I'll inherit everything. I've accepted that my husband will never get better." Each word she said felt like a sharp blow. Fatimah stood still, her heart heavy with a mix of sorrow and barely contained anger. There was nothing more to say. Sometimes the best help comes from unexpected places, not out of duty, but from silent kindness. Later that night, Fatimah quietly moved through the empty mansion, her steps soft and careful. Wrapped in a dark blanket, she carried something close to her chest, making sure no one noticed. She entered Sheikh Khaled's room and gently closed the door behind her. Standing by his bed, she slowly unwrapped the blanket to reveal a small Russian blue cat. Its bright green eyes shone in the moonlight, and its soft fur seemed to glow, almost as if it was made to stir forgotten memories. Fatimah carefully placed the cat on Khaled's still chest. "Look, Khaled, someone is here to help you remember what you love," she whispered gently. "What is going on?" Seeing her plan fall apart, Fatimah felt panic rise within her. Without thinking, she ran towards the horse and rider, her nurse's uniform fluttering as she shouted, "Get off now!" The rider looked confused. "What are you talking about? You paid me to perform for the paralyzed man." Fatimah's eyes burned with anger. "Don't call him that. His name is Khed," she snapped, her voice trembling for a moment before becoming firm. "Get down. I'm taking control now." The man slowly got off the horse, disbelief on his face. "What do you know about riding a horse?" he asked, sarcasm in his voice. Fatimah stared at him with a strong, steady look. "Never judge a book by its cover," she said confidently, surprising everyone with her calm. She got on the horse with skill, guiding it smoothly as if she had done this many times before. Facing the stunned crowd, Fatimah proudly declared, "My grandfather taught me to ride both motorcycles and horses. He made me extraordinary, maybe ugly, but extraordinary." She urged the horse to rear, its front legs lifting gracefully against the bright blue sky. The sight of Fatimah riding the powerful horse seemed to challenge all expectations. She began riding with purpose, performing impressive moves that left the onlookers speechless. Her voice rang out across the garden, full of emotion. "Khed, wake up, Khed. Today is 3 months. You can do it." Nora's anger reached its peak. Pointing at Fatimah, she shouted, her voice sharp, "Enough of this! Get off the horse now! Fatimah Khadija, you're fired!" Nora yelled. At that moment, Sheikh Khed seemed to focus on her, as though a spark of awareness had returned to him. His lips moved with difficulty, and a soft, broken sound escaped him. "Ma." Fatimah's heart raced with joy at hearing Sheikh Khed speak after so long. Layla, his wife, rushed to his side, her face full of surprise and disbelief. She kneeled beside him, wrapping her arms around him, her voice shaking with emotion. "What did you say, my love? Did you call me? Did everyone hear that? He called for me." She turned sharply and shouted at Fatimah, "Get off that horse right now and check his vitals." Fatimah quickly got off the horse, her heart pounding, but her hands remained calm. She checked his wrist for a pulse, felt his breathing, and checked the artery in his neck. Her face showed tenderness and focus, though tears fell down her cheeks. "Say my name again, my love. Say it one more time," Nora urged anxiously, staring at his face. The air was thick with tension as everyone looked at the sheikh. With great effort, Khed spoke again. Fatimah." Overjoyed, Layla gave Fatimah a proud look and said, "For doing your job well, I'll give you a bonus. But for disobeying my orders and acting without my permission, you're fired. I'll have Khed moved to the best rehab and neurology facility. Your limited skills are no longer needed here." Fatimah barely had time to react to Nora's harsh words when Khed tried to speak again. His voice was weak but stronger this time. "Ma, Fatimah Khadija." The nurse fell to her knees, covering her face with her hands as tears poured out. It wasn't just happiness, but a flood of emotions that had built up for too long. Nora, now furious, turned bright red, unable to hide her embarrassment. Her husband, in his first moments of waking, had called for a simple nurse instead of her, his wife. Khed, using all his remaining strength, looked at Nora and said slowly, with clear intent, "Ma maram, and leave me alone." Nora, shocked and furious, gritted her teeth and hissed, "You must be imagining things, Khed. Calling for a nurse instead of your wife. Is this how you start to wake up?" Fatimah, still kneeling, wiped away her tears with the back of her hand. But this time, something stronger than sadness shone in her eyes. With rising courage, she stood up, placing herself firmly between Khed and his wife. "Madam, you've heard the sheikh. Leave this room now. My job as a nurse is to care for my patient, and that means protecting him from any unnecessary stress, especially in his fragile condition." With careful precision, Fatimah adjusted Khed's position to ensure his comfort and stability. She took an oximeter from her pocket and clipped it onto his finger to check his oxygen levels, while her other hand gently checked his skin temperature. "The patient needs rest. Stress could harm his recovery," she said calmly but firmly, holding Nora's angry gaze. The tension in the room was thick, but Fatimah stood strong. Her professionalism and determination stood out in the middle of the chaos. When a man calls a name from the dark, it's because someone on the shore has called to him with faith stronger than words. Nora turned quickly to leave, wanting to avoid more embarrassment, but as she stormed off, a grey cat suddenly crossed her path. Startled, she tripped and fell backward onto the terrace. The scene seemed to happen in slow motion. The people watching, the housekeeper, the chef, and a few others, tried to hide their smiles. The cat, unaware of the trouble it caused, meowed softly before jumping onto Khed's lap and curling up like it belonged there. Khed's lips lifted into a small smile, a mix of irony and peace. Looking at Nora, still flustered and on the ground, he said softly, "It seems the cat has spoken for itself, madam." Furious, Layla quickly got to her feet, brushing off her robe awkwardly. The room stayed silent, but the unspoken judgment hung in the air. For the first time in years, Khed looked at peace, not just because of the cat, but because someone had finally stood strong for him. Nora pointed a finger at Fatimah, her voice filled with anger. "I guess this was your idea too, just like that ridiculous horse." Fatimah took a deep breath and kept her composure. Her voice was calm but firm as she responded, "But can't you at least be grateful that because of the horse and the cat, your husband was able to respond?" Nora's eyes burned with disbelief, anger, and contempt. Her voice grew sharp as she tried to dismiss Fatimah's efforts. "What good is that to me if he says the name of some simple nurse instead of calling for his beautiful wife?" A heavy silence fell in the room. The others present exchanged looks of surprise. Fatimah stayed calm, but her eyes showed a mix of sadness and determination. Layla, feeling her control slipping, raised her chin and spoke coldly. "I've had enough. I didn't marry to be humiliated. I'm leaving this house. I'll file for divorce and take half of everything. With the fortune I've helped build, even half will make me very rich." She paused and looked around at the others with a dismissive glance. Selfishness is like a maze. The one who creates it will get lost inside it. Days later, Nora began divorce proceedings, demanding half of Sheikh Khaled's wealth, claiming her rights as his wife. However, legal documents showed that Khaled's fortune had been made before they married, so her claims were denied. His wealth remained safe, ensuring his legacy. Over the next year, Khaled's recovery continued. With the help of a special device, he could speak in full sentences, and a motorized wheelchair gave him more independence. His relationship with Fatimah grew deeper, and it became clear to everyone how strong their bond had become. One warm afternoon, as Fatimah arranged flowers on a table in the mansion's garden, Khaled looked at her and said, "Fatimah al-Mansouri," his voice clearer thanks to the device. Surprised by the depth of his tone, she turned and smiled softly. "Yes, Khed." She moved closer to him. He took a breath, and despite his effort, he spoke clearly. "All this time, you've been more than a nurse to me. You've been my strength, my hope, my peace." Fatimah opened her mouth to reply, but Khaled raised a trembling hand to stop her. His eyes were filled with emotion as he continued. "Will you stay with me, not just as my caregiver, but as my partner in life, Fatimah? Will you marry me?" Time seemed to stop. Fatimah's hands went to her mouth in shock, tears streaming down her face as she processed his words. "Yes, Ahmed," she whispered, her voice shaking with happiness. "Yes, there's nothing I want more than to be with you." Khaled closed his eyes for a moment, letting the emotions wash over him. When he opened them again, he looked peaceful, something he hadn't felt in years. "Thank you, Fatimah al-Mansouri, my Fatimah al-Mansouri." Fatimah bent down and gently hugged him. The scent of lavender and jasmine surrounded him as their lips met in a tender kiss. Their wedding, simple but full of meaning, took place in the garden. From his wheelchair, Khaled said vows full of love and gratitude, marking the start of a new life with the woman who had helped save him. Accepting his new reality with grace, Khaled became a philanthropist, dedicating his time to helping people with disabilities. Together with Fatimah, their story inspired many, showing that love and faith can turn even the hardest challenges into opportunities for change. True strength comes from the heart, not the body, and only those who believe with determination can find the light after the darkness. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this heartwarming story. Fatimah and Sheikh Khaled's journey reminds us of the power of resilience, compassion, and love that rebuilds lives. Their story shows that even in the toughest times, there's hope if we believe in second chances. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe for more amazing stories that show us the beauty of the human spirit. And remember, every like and comment helps feed a stray dog in need, so let us know your thoughts below. We'll be happy to shout you out in our next video. Stay tuned for more stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us all of what really matters. See you next time.